Okay, so now we're going to talk about where do we start loading? Okay, what's the plan? So again, you want to kind of begin with the end in mind. So my goal is to beat the accuracy that I was getting off of my Norma brass, and try to get a little bit higher velocity than I was getting out of the Varget with the H4895, and all while maintaining accuracy. Okay, so first place to look is I've got a couple of loading manuals out here. So I am using the 69 grain Sierra Match King. Okay, this dude right here. 22 cal, 69 grain, hollow point boat tail. Here's the numbers. All right. So I've got a couple of loading manuals that I'm just going to kind of bounce off, just a sanity check. Okay, don't just take one source. I was disappointed that the Sierra load data that didn't have anything for H4895. They did have IMR 4895, but although some people claim it's the same, it is not the same. So do not use that load data for the H versus the IMR 4895. Two companies under the same umbrella, but slightly different chemical makeup. So please use your load data. All right, so this book here, this is what the Lee. This is the Lee loading manual. So they don't have the exact bullet that Sierra Match King, but it is a 69 grain, and they do have H4895 starting load at 24.0 and max load at 26.0, and it notes that 26 is getting into compression. Okay, making it still safe. That's a safe cup pressure and safe chamber pressure. But getting close to that 3,000 feet per second, man, I'd love to get close to that and have an accurate bullet. So then I've got this other manual here, which is kind of the complete reloading guide for 223. It does have the 69 grain Sierra Match King. Varget was what I was using before, but it also does have H4895 starting load at 24.0 and maxing out at 26.0, noting that 26 is getting into compression. So I don't know if they just copied the data out of the Lee book or not, but it's pretty much identical. All right. I also looked under the 5.56 section in here, under the service rifle, and I'm sorry, that was another book. Anyways, I've got Hornady, and I've got a couple other loading books that didn't have the relevant data for H4895 under 69 grain. However, one book highly recommend, Top Grade Ammunition, by Glenn Ziedeker. I'm sure I butchered that name, but his recommendation for a starting point, again, he doesn't like to recommend loads in other people's rifles, and I 100% agree. But his starting point, or his estimated accuracy point for 68, 69 grain boat tail hollow points, much like the Sierra and Match King that I'm using, is right about that 24.5, which is just shy of the 3,000 feet per second, and H4895. So that's a second and third source. And then probably the best source of them all is looking at actually the Hodgdon website, specifically for a 69 grain bullet in the 223 Remington. You pull that load data and you get basically the exact same thing. You get a starting load of 24.0 and a max load of 26.0, and it notes on the website that 26.0 is getting towards the compression point, if not at it. Okay, so basically that's 1, 2, 3, 4 sources that all have almost exactly the same points, which that doesn't always happen, but that does kind of give you a warm and fuzzy that you can't go wrong if you're in that area. So a little bit more onto my process. So I like these little MTM 20 round rifle boxes, and what I actually did is I had this this kind of foamy material, and I cut it out to size and I put it in there because I guess, you know, they make these for several different cartridges, and people, you know, may use several different overall lengths, so it makes sense that it would be slightly oversized on the tall end. And I just didn't like putting them all in my ammo box and having them rattling around, so I put that foam in there. It actually came from when I installed a new dishwasher. This was kind of the sound deadening foam that they had, or I don't know if foam's not the right word, but material that they had around it, and I pulled it off and said, hey, I might be able to use that for something. So there I did. So basically what I do is when I'm working up a load, I'll use these boxes because, you know, you're going to use 5, 10 at a time. You don't need a big 50 or 100 round box, especially when you have multiple. Now I have used, you know, the Ziploc bags before, and they work just fine. But the idea is that you capture the cartridge in the correct load data, and then the brass that is associated with it after it's been fired. So I like to use like these little 3x5 cards, and you know, I just use them and I cross them out and then use the other side. So what I've decided for this workup is to start at the 24.0, which, you know, almost never is the starting point where you end up, but it you know, you got to start at the beginning, right? So so I make up these 3x5 cards again ahead of time before I start loading, so that I know where I'm going. So I'm not just blindly loading and then forget where I'm at, and trust me, it happens. So I'll do some of the stats here. So I'm using the Lapua brass. I use the CCI 400 primers, mainly just because of availability, and they work really well with the Hodgdon Varget already, so I'm sure they'll work fine with this. I actually did a study an experiment between the CCI 400 and the BR2s, the bench rest version, which are slightly more expensive, and I didn't see any difference in standard deviation or extreme spread or accuracy. So I stick with the 400s. They're cheaper and I can get them. They're available. I don't have to try to get them from some, you know, online source and pay the hazmat fee or something like that. So like I said, I'm using the H4895 and the 69 grain Sierra Match Kings. So that's my combination. The only change to that variable is the powder charge. So I'm going to do the 24.0 10 rounds, 24.5 10 rounds, 25.0 10 rounds, 25.5 10 rounds, and then 26 10 rounds. Now the idea is you take your loaded cartridges, you place them in the box here, and then what I do is I just tuck this 3x5 card into it just like that, and it's secure, it's tight. It's not going to just fall out. It sticks in there pretty well. If it didn't, I'd use tape or, you know, any other means to temporarily glue it on here. And I like these cases again because they're clear. You can see through them. You can see the rounds. You can see what I've written there. They stack well. You just throw them in your ammo box. These just fold down here. They stack up really nicely. Take to the range. So then again, you know, fire the rounds. I use a brass catcher when I'm doing my workups, and inspect the rounds or inspect the brass as it comes out, looking for pressure signs. And then what I do is I put the brass back in the same box and put the label back in it, and then put it in my ammo can. So basically when I'm back at the loading bench, I can take them out and do a further inspection on them. And a lot of times I'll even clean them in the same batches that they were fired in, so that once they're cleaned, I can take another look at them and look and see if there's anything I might have missed, pressure sign wise, because that's not something you want to mess with. So what this does, this method, it keeps it very clear. So then back to the loading aspect of it rather than the firing aspect is I'll take one of these out, put it next to my loading block. And what I do is, so if I'm prepping some cases and they're already done and they're fully prepped and ready to go, I will put them in this downward configuration, because I can easily look at them. If I have to take a break or I have to walk away or come back another day, I can easily see that these are not primed. And because of their orientation, I know they're not primed, so that means there's no powder and there's no brass, right? The powder would just fall out if it was upside down like that. Then once I prime them, I flip them over the other way. So it's just a quick visual for me. When I see a loading block of my own stuff, I can quickly tell, okay, these are ready to go, primed or not primed, but they're fully prepped, ready to go. These guys are fully prepped, ready to go, and they have their primers in them, ready to go. So all I need is powder and bullet. So basically what I'll do in my process is, after I like to hand prime. There's various reasons for that rather than using the press, but I'll go through and hand prime them. It's quick, it's easy. I like the feel of it better. I feel it gives me more control over my own process. Then I'll end up with a loading block where they're all facing upward, so I know they're all ready to go. Then I'll use my funnel. I like this guy. It's stainless and brass. I don't remember who makes it, but I got it off of Midway USA. And highly recommend it over just the generic one. This is made specifically for a 22 caliber, so it fits on there really nice. And then when you're throwing your charge, there's no chance whatsoever that you're going to get any spillage from the edges as you're pouring in your powder, which used to happen to me all the time. So really like that. And again, with the stainless, you don't get any static electricity on there that might annoy you as you're going through your process. So basically what I'll do is I'll wind up with a loading block full of primed brass, and I'll throw my charges on my Charge Master Light, get them in there. Once they're settled, if they need to be settled, then I'll just put the bullet in, put them right into the box that they're going into, and I'll have this kind of indicator here with what I'm doing. So that way, if I have to stop in the middle, something happens, I got to walk away and come back, that's right there and ready to go. I have no question where I was. I know exactly what my brass is. I can look at it. I can say, okay, this is primed and ready to go. I'm doing this load configuration right here, and I've done 2 or 3 or however many I've done so far. So it just, organize your thoughts and organize your actions and your process so that you can't make a mistake and accidentally, you think you're loading 25 and you're actually loading 24 or something like that. So if you're really methodical, really careful like that, you'll never have a problem. So anyways, that's the plan. That's the basic overview of the process. And again, I'm testing out the difference between my Norma with Varget into the extended capacity of Lapua with H4895 to try to get just a little bit more velocity out of it. And we'll see what happens. So that's my plan. I'm going to put the camera up on a tripod and just kind of quickly not quickly, but put it over my shoulder and kind of show you guys how I do my thing. All right.